Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something pretty intense, a really complex topic. We're doing a deep dive into a document that frames a critical global issue, human rights, specifically in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian situation. Our mission today is really just to get into this powerful piece of writing. So the specific question we're looking at through the lens of this source is Israel committing oppression against Palestinians? The document itself is titled Palestinian Oppression: A Cry for Justice. It's presented almost like a debate opening statement. It lays out key arguments against Israel, but it also, acknowledges and then tries to address Israel's counterpoint.
Exactly. And it's really important for you listening to understand our goal here. We want to distill the core arguments, the facts as they are presented in this specific document. We're aiming to help you understand the points being made, the perspectives within this text, impartially. We're not endorsing anything here. This deep dive is really just about equipping you with the insights from this particular source material.
And it kicks off with a really strong statement, doesn't it? Today, we raise our voice for humanity. Sets a very emotional and moral tone right away. Then it jumps straight into describing over 7 decades of what it calls occupation. It lists things like injustice, forced evictions, illegal settlements, and brutal military actions by Israel as sort of direct evidence. And it asks point blank, is this not oppression? It even defines zulm, clarifies it means oppression.
Right, and it uses examples like the bombing of homes, hospitals, schools in Gaza, citing thousands of civilian deaths, as, in its view, unequivocal proof. It kind of bypasses any debate about intent there.
So as it builds this case, what aspects of the occupation does it really focus on?
Well, it's quite systematic. It doesn't just throw things out there, it categorizes them. For instance, it starts with illegal occupation. It asserts Israel occupied Palestinian land back in 1948 through war and displacement, and it immediately tries to back that up by referencing UN resolutions, specifically UN Resolution 242.
Ah, the one calling for withdrawal from territories occupied in 1967.
Exactly that one. And the source claims Israel ignores this call, which, directly challenges the legal standing of Israel's presence, according to this document.
Okay. And building on that claim of illegal occupation.
Yeah. Then the document moves to alleged human rights violations. And here it leans on the credibility of organizations like the UN, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch.
Right. Using established human rights monitors.
Precisely. To document what the source calls war crimes, it uses that striking description of Gaza as the largest open-air prison, alleging people are denied freedom of movement, food, water, medical aid. It's strong language.
And it gets even more specific, right? It mentions particular actions.
It does. It addresses ethnic cleansing and settler violence, claims settlers, often backed by the military, bulldoze Palestinian homes. It names places like Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan, those East Jerusalem neighborhoods we hear about in eviction disputes, as examples of forced displacement.
So what other methods of control or specific incidents does it highlight?
Well, it continues with use of excessive force. It talks about peaceful protests, like Gaza's March of Return, being met with live bullets. That's the claim. It also brings up the killing of the journalist Shireen Abu Akleh.
The well-known Palestinian-American journalist, yes.
Right, and the source states no justice has been served in that case. And finally, it raises apartheid policies, arguing Palestinians face different rights, checkpoints, and it mentions Human Rights Watch calling it an apartheid regime.
Now, you mentioned it acknowledges a counterpoint. How does it handle Israel's perspective?
It does, briefly. It acknowledges Israel's argument about acting in self-defense against terrorism. It mentions Hamas, the use of human shields, rockets being launched from Gaza.
Okay, but then
the source itself immediately argues against that justification. It states these claims cannot justify bombing civilians or blockade. That's its position. And then the source itself immediately argues against that justification. It states these claims cannot justify bombing civilians or blockading 2 million people. That's its position. And then it pivots to what it calls an Islamic and humanitarian perspective. Yeah, emphasizing that Islam commands justice, support for the oppressed. It even quotes Prophet Muhammad about helping the oppressed, even by stopping an oppressor.
Right.
And it concludes that it's not just Muslims, but all religions and decent people around the world are speaking up.
So pulling this all together, the main takeaway from this source material seems to be
that
it frames the situation very clearly as oppression, as zulm. not just a conflict. That seems key. It uses the long occupation, the human rights concerns it lists, and this call for justice to make its case. And it ends with that powerful declaration. This is not just a conflict. This is oppression. The world must stop being silent. Palestine lives matter. A strong appeal for global action.
Absolutely. And that leaves a pretty significant question for you, the listener. When you encounter a source with such strong concluding statements, calling on people to stand up not just as Muslims, but as humans, asserting that justice delayed is justice denied. What does it mean for you to critically engage with these deeply held narratives? How do documents like this one shape global conversations about rights and conflict? And maybe what responsibility does that place on us as, informed individuals trying to understand the world?
That's definitely something to reflect on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive today. We really encourage you to think about the perspectives presented in this source material, this multifaceted situation, and that profound call for justice it contains.